Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome to the 13th edition of Apeejay Kolkata Literary Festival. Apeejay Kolkata Literary Festival is Kolkata's first and India's only literary festival created by a bookstore. At AKLF, we engage with the literary world and celebrate books, music, art, films, and more with the finest creative minds in the nation and globally. In today's virtual session, we have with us an actor who started in Hindi films, worked in Hollywood, and became a star in Europe. An international actor, producer, columnist, and activist who's also a voting member of the Oscars Academy, Mr. Kabir Bedi, a man whose ongoing career spans 3 continents, 3 decades, in 3 performing mediums: films, television, and theater. Mr. Bedi is now a debut author too, with his best selling autobiography, Stories I Must Tell: The Emotional Life of an Actor. Stories I Must Tell is the story of a middle class boy from Delhi whose career now spans the globe. Equally, it is the tale of how this boy survived the roller coaster journey of making, unmaking, and remaking of him as a person. This is the story of Mr. Kabir Bedi in his own words. We also have with us the moderator for our session today, the very talented Advaita Kala, an author and screenwriter. She has written screenplays for films such as the romantic drama Anjana Anjani and the thriller Kahani. The AKLF team is delighted and privileged to have both of you here with us today. Over to Advaita to take the discussion forward.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank Oxford Bookstore for organizing this conversation with somebody that I really enjoy chatting with. So it's always a pleasure to be in conversation with you, Kabir Bedi.
Thank you so much, Advaita, and I thank everyone in the Kolkata Film Festival and Oxford Bookstore for organizing this event, for getting us together, and for the wonderful introduction that I was given. Most grateful.
And, Kabir, before there was Priyanka Chopra, Irfan Khan, who else? Aishwarya Rai. There was this creation, which was the crossover star. And you were the original, the OG, as we say in today's parlance, in Twitter slang or internet slang. You were the OG. And at a time when the world was very clearly divided, there was a straight line. We weren't the global world that we are today. And
yes.
You were the original crossover star during those years. So I just want to kind of dive back to your childhood. So you spent a couple of years in Nainital, Sherwood College. Were you thinking of Hollywood at that point of time as a little boy?
Far from it, far from it. I never even thought of myself as being a professional actor. Acting used to be a lovely hobby of mine. I acted in school at Sherwood, then at St. Stephen's College in Delhi, then with the great Joy Michael in Delhi. Then I moved to Bombay, joined the multinational advertising agencies like Lintas, with Arik Padamsi being my boss and guru in the theatre. So it was just a hobby. It became a profession only when I did a play called Tughlaq, Girish Karnad's first play in English, directed by Arik, where I played the role of Tughlaq, and it sort of so struck Bombay for various reasons that I got a lot of film offers. And I thought, well, I want to be a filmmaker. Let me enter the film industry. Aage dekhenge kya hota hai. It was that kind of attitude that took me into the film industry. I never imagined I'd be a big star, let alone an international star.
And how alien was the film industry for someone with your background? Public school, St. Stephen's College, parents, very intellectual, involved in the freedom movement, very different from the glitz and glamour of Bollywood or the Hindi film industry and advertising. How foreign was it?
You're right, Advaita. It was quite a foreign environment for me. I used to watch the good films, the great classics, etc., and I watched English films. So my background was very sort of Western in a sense. And entering the film industry, I fancied myself as a serious actor. And I didn't think I had to sing and dance. I'm a leading man. Of course, I was very wrong. It was a major miscalculation on my part, because all the leading men of the era be it Feroz Khan or Vinod Khanna or Rajesh Khanna, or even the greats, Devanand, Dilip Kumar, Raj Kapoor, all sang songs. And that was a requirement for actors that wanted to be stars. Music is a major source of revenue for Bollywood and for all Indian commercial film industries. It was a strange place for me to be. And that is one of the reasons why I thought that if I really want a career as an actor, because I began to like acting professionally, I said, I must think of going abroad. So when the Italians came and there was this possibility of going abroad, I gave everything I could to win that audition and get the role, which was the role of Sandokan, which made me a star in Europe.
And I want to know a little more about your Mumbai, or at that time Bombay years, and the Juhu gang, and the very bohemian lifestyle that you all led, which frankly sounds like a lot of fun. There was a freedom to it, which I believe even today's generation doesn't enjoy.
My whole life has been a series of adventures. But the fact of the matter is, it's been an adventure of sorts. Even entering the Hindi film industry was an adventure. Entering advertising was an adventure. So this spirit of adventure, I think, came from my own nature, from my parents' very unusual lives, as well as represented the 60s. The whole social, political, and sexual revolutions that were happening in the 60s, where the old norms were being challenged across the world, starting in the West, but affecting us all, even at St. Stephen's College in Delhi, even in Mumbai. There was a sense of wanting to push the boundaries of convention, think of life in a more liberated kind of way. And it was the age of hippies, of people demonstrating for peace on the streets, opposing the Vietnam War, people wearing psychedelic clothes, the Beatles and the Doors and Pink Floyd and the Rolling Stones were creating all kinds of new music that just gave us the feeling that the world is changing and we must change with it. And of course, my marrying Pratima was in a sense a catalyst, because Pratima herself was a very free-spirited person. And so together our relationship evolved. It didn't begin, it sort of evolved to an open marriage. It didn't begin as an open marriage. And in my book, I've explored how a normal marriage becomes an open marriage and what it takes to be in an open marriage and what are the consequences of an open marriage. All that I've explored in my book. But the fact of the matter is, it was very unusual to live that kind of life. And even the very fact that, forget open marriage, the very fact that we lived together was headlines in magazines. They lived together. Today, nobody even bothers. It doesn't even count as news. But those days, it was big. Two people, young professionals chose to live together publicly without apologizing for it.
And you told me once that about that time in your life, you said there was also a lot of it had to do with provocation. You know, the desire to elicit some sort of response from society in general, and this buttoned up way of living life. And how successful were you at doing that? I think you were very successful.
Well, you know, Pratima had this disdain for this log kya kahenge syndrome. And you know, even when we got married, we definitely said there's going to be no dowry. We married in a way whereby we didn't invite anybody to the wedding because it was expensive.
Right.
We just sent them intimate cards rather than invitation cards saying, greet us and wish us the next time you see us. And the Jew gang in general was one that was deeply concerned with, you know, what's the meaning of life, and discussed Osho and Jiddu Krishnamurti and all the modern Indian philosophers. And there were new streams of thought coming in. And Osho was sort of known as the free sex guru, which is really an unfair categorization because he was far more profound than that. He was really a great interpreter of many religions and streams of thought, and was a very inspiring man to listen to. all my friends from Vijay Anand to Shekhar Kapoor to Ketan Anand to Balraj Sahni's son Parikshit, all used to go to listen to the show. I never went because there was a problem. I didn't like being told what to wear when to meet him. But I regret that. That was a great opportunity lost. But I used to read him. I used to listen to him. And it sort of became, again, part of that spirit of rebellion that was changing an age, that was challenging the norms. And we reveled in that. We liked that.
Mm-hmm. And this decision to be in an open marriage, was it something that, came about naturally, or did it just fall into place for you all? How did you reach that, decision that, fine, we're together, but these are the parameters under which we have this relationship?
Advaita, I'm not going to give away the crown jewels of my book in a few sound bites, but let me just say that entering an open marriage came at a point where there'd been infidelities on both sides. There were children involved, and it was almost like the last throw of the dice to try and keep the marriage together. And we tried our best to make that happen. In the end, it didn't, and all the reasons that led to it, of being in it, of what followed from it, all that's in my book. It would take our entire session to describe all the dramas that happened between them as a result of that. But the fact of the matter is, we did try something very different, very scandalous in a way. Even today, it would be scandalous.
Yes.
And the fact is that at the end of the day, it didn't work. But somehow, Pratima and I remained friends for the rest of our lives, as long as she was alive. And that's one of the things that I regard as one of my achievements, that I'm able to remain friends with my ex-wives, even though we separate.
And this really brings me to the marriage that you saw most intimately growing up, was that of your parents. And this sort of cross-national romance. And it's beautifully written in your book. I mean, it moved me to tears to read the exchange of letters, and the letter your mother in particular wrote to her to-be husband's older brother. And I just want you to talk a little bit about that.
Everyone's parents are special to them. But I feel that my parents would have been special to me even if they were not my parents. They were just such extraordinary people. Here were two Oxford graduates who came back to India, gave up all the possibilities of what it was to be an Oxford graduate in India, and entered the freedom struggle. And yet with their differences. My father became this flaming communist. My mother became the Gandhian. In fact, she was one of the 57th handpicked Satyagrahi of Gandhi in India, and led the demonstration in our hometown, Dera Baba Nanak, against the British. Big headlines, Tribune wrote all about it, etc., because it was a British woman protesting against England and England's rule in India, or Britain's rule in India. So it was a life of extraordinary sacrifice, because there was never enough money around.
I know.
There was my father on hand-printed presses trying to, create anti-British newspapers, not being paid by advertisers, not being paid by vendors, going broke. Their story is that they stuck by each other. And even after independence, when they moved on in religious ways, my mother to become a Buddhist and my father to become a teacher and philosopher. He went on to Italy and became a major philosopher there. My mother went on to become the highest ranking Buddhist nun in the world. And yet there was a bond between them, where they always supported each other, always respected each other. My father had a picture of my mother framed on his home in Italy, even after he married this Italian woman, and that remained with him for decades. So that kind of relationship and the letters exchanged between them, father's last 3 desires in life, where he talked about my mother and her ordination and how it affected him. Those are deeply moving things. I've quoted a lot of letters in my book, even from Prathama, even from Parveen, because I think it's very good to give other people's voices a chance to be heard that can be juxtaposed against what I'm saying, and people can feel the truth of that interaction in that moment. I think it's very important to make people feel part of the process. And that's the whole style of my book. It's not just descriptions of great things that happened to me or even bad things that happened to me. It's the experience of being in them, which is why the subtitle of my book is The Emotional Life of an Actor, because I've described everything in my story through a very emotional prism in terms of how did that feel? What did that make me feel? How did I react to it? What are my doubts? What are my dilemmas? What are my desires? All those things I've shared in a very open way. And one of the things that surprises people is, how can you be so honest? Because
Yes, I was just coming to that.
I just decided to tell it like it was, like it is, and like what's my truth, and let the chips fall where they may. Because if I'm to tell my story with authentically, as clearly and honestly as I can, I have to have the freedom to talk about others, but also talk about my own frailties, my own mistakes, and share that with people. So they see me as a human being on a very human journey, with all its pleasures and pains. And that's been the effort. And so, coming back to your original question, my parents, they were extraordinary people with extraordinary sensitivity and humanity, who taught me to respect other religions, who taught me tolerance, who taught me kindness, and exemplified it in their own lives. And it was amazing that despite having very little money, at one time even living in tents on the grounds of a Buddhist vihara on the outskirts of Delhi, they always saved enough to give us, their children, a good education, which is why I was able to go to good schools. Of course, I had to work my way through St. Stephen's, but that's another story, which led to my
yes, which is when the Beatles come in. And
That's right. Some adversity also creates wonderful opportunities. If I didn't have to work for my living, I wouldn't have been working for All India Radio as a reporter. If I wasn't working for them as a reporter, I would never have had the opportunity of saying, let me interview the Beatles. And my boss was laughing at me and saying, the whole Delhi press corps wants to get to them. How are you going to get to them? Give me a chance. Give me a tape recorder. Give me a badge. They gave it to me. I went there. How I got that interview, what happened in that interview, and most importantly, the consequences of that interview. I have reinvented myself so many times.
Yes.
Because my life has been a roller coaster. It's been up and down, huge triumphs and huge setbacks. And that's the joy of my story.
It also reminds me of this sliding doors analogy, where maybe you're, it's sort of the train you get on, the door that slides open and the one you decide to go through, and the one you decide to stay back on the platform and ignore. Have you had those encounters as well, where you could have stepped onto a train and then you chose not to? Vis-a-vis, you did get onto a train without thinking much about it, and it took your life in a whole other direction.
That's happened to me a lot of times. Whether I didn't step on a train and where that might have taken me, I don't know. But certainly a lot of the places I got to a result of stepping onto trains without really sometimes thinking deeply about it, just following my heart and following my impulse and getting on that train.
Right.
And that's the other thing, the importance of listening to that inner voice within yourself that whispers to you. If you do that, it's a good friend. Very often we disregard that because we don't like what it's saying. It's taking us out of our comfort zones. It's taking us out of things we are happy to be doing right now. But something's saying, no, move on. This is not working for you. And if you listen to that and act on it, amazing things can happen. as my book exemplifies, I think.
I actually see that also in your life journey. If I just look at your career, the Hindi film industry had a certain template for a hero. Now,
Yes.
if you had fit into that certain template, your international career would probably have never happened, making you
Quite right. Quite right.
crossover. So I think that's what's remarkable about your journey. And this is just one example, is that you've never sort of held yourself back from anything that may be perceived as a limitation and just gone on to, draw the line sort of further and further away from you. And I think
Right.
that's very inspiring about your journey, at least for me when I was reading it.
And then let me tell you one thing. Sorry, carry on.
No, go ahead.
No, I was saying, it's like right now I'm sitting in Rome, in an old villa in Rome, quarantined, halfway through the quarantine to joining the Italian VIP edition of Big Brother.
Right.
And it's almost like I'm entering a whole new thing over again. It's nothing I can predict what will happen. It's a mixture of some very strange and amazing people. Hope to. It came to me as a challenge, and I perceived it as a challenge. A few years ago, say 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I did another thing called Isola dei Famosi, which is like Island of the Famous, where celebrities are thrown onto a desert island and you have to find food and survive. And there I was up against people half my age and twice as fit. And yet I managed to come second.
Wow.
12 weeks, I lost 12 kilos. But, it was an adventure. And that is really the hallmark of my life. To read my life is to go on a great adventure with all kinds of ups and downs.
Absolutely. And it brings me to Praveen Babi, who, you had a very significant relationship with at a very important time in your life as well, because the world was pretty much exploding for you. You went on the Sandokan trip, became a bona fide celebrity in Europe, across Europe. A lot of people say Italy, but I have seen videos of like you being feted in Spain and a lot of the other countries. So it was not just Italy. And
all across Europe.
Yeah, it was all across Europe. And and there's this gala in Spain actually is what I'm talking about. It was televised, and this is the mid 70s, I imagine. And Praveen Babi is with you, and everybody's of course fawning over you. And she's this big star back home in India. She's been on the cover of Time magazine. And I loved the way you kind of brought her into that conversation and sort of introduced her and wanted to give her an equal footing, as opposed to just being sort of your arm candy. I thought that was really progressive.
Well, it was progressive, but it was also something which I wanted to do. Kabir Bedi is the sort of third chapter of my book, and it's called Days of Love and Glory, because I've sort of combined the Praveen Babi's presence in my life with my rise in Italy and all that followed from there. So there's this strange jugalbandi of extraordinary euphoria, as well as the problems that arose with Praveen because of that success. And there was this incredible instance where Gina Lollobrigida invited us to dinner. And Gina and Sophia Loren were the two biggest stars of Italy at the time. So to be invited by her was an extraordinary honor. And she took us to her home first and introduced us around, but kind of ignored Praveen. Then we went to dinner at this restaurant. And again, she ignored Praveen and she said, "Come, let's dance." And there was a sort of beautiful restaurant with the band playing, formal music, and we sort of dancing the foxtrot, etc., on this dimly lit dance floor. And then she comes back to the table and she says to Praveen, "And you, my dear, what are you doing here? Following the star?" And I was gobsmacked, because here was one of the biggest stars in the world, a woman I adored, insulting the woman that I loved. I didn't quite know what to do. And before I could react, Praveen, who was no slouch, said, "No, my dear, I'm with my man." because I have a man. And Gina said, oh, she's very clever, this one, very clever. And Praveen said, let's dance. And deadly, and so I went out to the floor, danced with her. She said, I'm leaving. I said, you're leaving the dance floor? No, I'm leaving the restaurant. I said, you can't leave the restaurant. Gina Lorabridge does invite us to dinner. She said, I don't care about her. I'm leaving. I don't like her. And I was faced with this dilemma. Do I stay with my host, this great star, or do I go with the woman that I love? And in the end, when we went back, but we picked up a bag and I knelt down to Gina and said, Gina, I'm very sorry, but we have to go. No, not possible. Dinner's coming. Where are you going? This is not right. I said, Gina, so sorry, but we have to leave. I hope you understand why. And I left with Praveen because it was very important for her as a person. I mean, she was a big star in India. She was a bigger star than me. And not to get the same respect as me was unacceptable, both to her and to me. So, like you said in Spain, wherever I could, I would try and include her because it would create enormous insecurities within her if she felt slighted, if she felt sidelined. And it started even at the airport when I came in Rome and fans went mad.
Yes.
One fan pushed her and it ruined my whole triumphal ride into Rome because Praveen went into this huge snit. So those are things that I'm very careful of. But then, I respect her, I love her, and the woman that I love has to be respected. So there was this constant conflict within me of trying to keep a balance between my success and the needs of her dignity and making her feel comfortable with my success. And it's a very moving chapter because it's full of triumphs and it's full of tragedies. And I think anyone who reads that chapter will get a deep sense of what Praveen was like, what our relationship was like, and what triumph and failure can mean.
And I think also, increasingly I felt from that Italy trip onwards, you started walking on eggshells around her a little bit. I think that was the beginning of the unraveling of the relationship.
Yeah. It was because there were all kinds of insecurities that crept up. And in time, there was one fear of not getting the same level of work that I was getting. But I got her the lead role opposite me in the next Sandokan series, which eventually she walked out of because Amar Akbar Anthony became a success in India. So I won't go into the whole story and all the details and all the dramas, but those are big choices that people have to make in life, and particularly when you're in showbiz and in love with somebody else in showbiz. Those are the dilemmas and decisions that you face, and how you face them, what decisions you make. Though that's part of my chapter on Praveen and the success of Sandokan.
And also to watch from afar as someone that you once deeply loved unravel in the way that she did must have been very difficult. And I must commend you for that, is that you've never been one of those who's, flaunted that aspect of your life or your relationship. You waited till your autobiography. You've never used that in a way that one saw many people who were once part of her life do. That must have also been something that took a lot out of you to watch that happening. Someone so beautiful and so accomplished.
Yeah, it was. If you love somebody and love them deeply, it's sad to see them disintegrate. And almost as bad when you split up, what the press writes about you, blaming you for her mental state, blaming you for causing her breakdown, was even more painful. And I really had to wait many years before I set the record straight, because otherwise it would just be like fishing for publicity for no reason. But when I'm telling my story, I have to tell it like it is, like it was, and like I would like it to be remembered.
Right. And you're, of course, father and grandfather now, as hard as that is to believe. How are these two roles different from each other? What has been your experience as a father? And then what has been your experience as a grandfather? Are you different with your children as vis-a-vis your grandchildren?
Of course. With your children, you have to sort of Try and encourage them when you think they're going in the right direction. Try to nudge them in the right direction, and try and dissuade them when you think they're entering areas that might damage them. So you're not always popular with your children. With your grandchildren, you can just spoil them. You don't have to worry about, take the responsibility of having to raise them or deal with their day-to-day problems, etc. You just enjoy them, you spoil them. And in my case, I'm so fortunate to have Alaya as my granddaughter and Omar as my grandson. And one of the great moments of my life was presenting her the Filmfare Best Actress debut for her role in Jawani Janeman at the Filmfare Awards. So they've given me reason to be very proud of them. And I am a very lucky grandfather in that way. My children, I've had, my relationship with my children was not always, has not always been smooth or beautiful. There have been areas of great conflict in terms of decisions they were making, and things I wanted to dissuade them from. I won't get into all that, but the fact is, it's all water under the bridge now. We're good friends, and they love me and I love them.
And, you've had this colorful life, as they would say in the tabloid press. And then you came back around 360 and now have been in this committed, happy marriage for a couple of years now. What has that been like?
Wait a minute. Advaita, let me set one thing clear. It's not a couple of years. It's the longest relationship I've had.
Really?
Praveen and I actually have been together for 16 years. We married in 2016.
Yes.
So that's 5 years. But we were there together for 10 years before that. And it's been the longest relationship I've had. It's been the most deeply satisfying relationship I've had. So let's give credit where credit is due. Praveen has been a huge influence in my life and a huge presence and a huge joy to me.
And tell me something, what has made this relationship different? Is it the stage you're in your life? Is it the person that you're in love with and you're with? Or what makes a relationship work? It can even be a generic answer. It doesn't have to be specific to your own experience.
It can't be a generic answer because every person is different, every relationship is different, and nobody ever knows what happens between two people, really. What I can say in my specific case is that for me, each relationship was radically different. Prathama had a certain youthful energy to it. Praveen had its emotional intensity and its tragedy as well. Ishel was also part of my settling into America, getting to know the American culture, benefited from her understanding and support. Nikki was again another live wire who had lots of creative sides and was a great actress herself. Today is a great radio presenter in England, a big star in the BBC. And with Praveen, I just found a kind of level of companionship and support that has resonated for me. And what you realize is that the passion of first love passes, but what remains is the companionship. And what has remained for me is the sense of companionship. So if that companionship is something that gives joy to both, then it's a very powerful glue and force to the relationship. And that's what Praveen has largely given me. No relationship is perfect. I mean, it doesn't exist because we're all imperfect people with our temperaments, with our likes and dislikes, but agreeing to disagree, mutual respect, companionship on a long. Those are the things that make for an enjoyable time together overall.
I want to ask you, do a little time travel. We live in very judgmental times. We live in the time of cancel culture, where the system sort of discourages you from being authentic. And when I speak with you, I realize that you've led your life in such a candid, authentic way. Of course, the book reflects that. But even, just you've been who you were through it all, you've held back even when you were mischaracterized out of the sense of loyalty and respect for someone that you were with. You've been yourself. Would you have been able to do that in the present age? And what is your recommendation for those who are going through this present age of social media censure and all of the other things that come with being in the public realm?
Social media is a multi-pronged animal. It can enhance your views, can spread your views, but then by the same token, it opens you up to criticism as well. And you have to deal with the criticism along with it. Now, no one can support the repression of people speaking their minds and their opinions. At the same time, one is living in a very different context right now. And it's important for people to express themselves in ways that are effective in terms of what's best for the country. And if it's just a matter of politics and expressing polarizing views, then the other people will strike back. That's the nature. In England, I just saw on the BBC, 57% of people in England are afraid to speak their minds because they fear they'll be cancelled or censured in some way. And we're talking about England here, which we regard as the hallmark of democracy. There is a certain fear that's been instilled by the trolls of social media in people in terms of expressing their views. And this is worldwide. And this is worldwide because small interest groups get together and savagely attack those that state opinions contrary to what they like. That comes with the territory. I feel that people need to still speak their mind. And speak their mind if it is in the best interest of the country. That is what I do believe, and I will continue to believe.
Well, as always, it's fascinating speaking with you. I want to say that I'm so delighted to see your book on so many best of the year lists. And
thank you. And let me say that the Italian edition has come out. And so it's been printed by Mondadori. And my joining Big Brother as a contestant will certainly help people become more aware of the book and remind them of all that I have been and am in this country. And Italy has given me probably more love and honor than any other country, so I'm deeply grateful to them. But it's part of the adventure of my life that began with my parents, continued with my education, my interview with the Beatles, joining Bollywood, joining Hollywood, Europe, the Bond film, Bold and Beautiful, all those things. And, hitting the heights of stardom in Europe and then ending up in bankruptcy, all those stories that are part of my adventure are sort of mirrored in everything that is.
Do tell us about the photograph on the cover. How old are you? I mean, you're just stunningly gorgeous. And this is there's you, and I think in the present, I think there's Hrithik Roshan, who have those kind of international movie star looks. So I want you to tell us a little bit about this photograph on the cover, because that's interesting as well.
The cover photograph was taken by a great photographer called Terry O'Neill. He was the Annie Leibovitz of his age, and everybody wanted to be photographed by him. He was the photographer of the Rolling Stones, of British royalty, of American film stars. Faye Dunaway was his girlfriend. So to be photographed by Terry O'Neill was something special. And when Terry O'Neill took a picture of mine, this picture of mine, and said to me, "This picture is special," it meant all the world to me. So that's why I sort of kept it in my collection for all these years. And when it came time for my book, it was Parveen who said, "I think that's the best picture ever taken of you. You've got to have it on the cover." So I must thank her for this cover as well.
Well, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Do enjoy your stint in Italy and in Big Brother VIP. And I'm
Right.
sure you're going to have fun, because I think you just dive headlong into all experiences. So I think you're going to have a lot of fun more than anything else.
Yeah, so jumping into the unknown gives you butterflies in your stomach. But then, as they say, before an actor goes on for performance, the professional uses that nervousness to give a good performance. The amateur gets thrown by it. So hopefully the butterflies in my stomach will lead to a great adventure in Big Brother in a way that's pleasurable and memorable for me. And I'll get all the reports when I come out.
Well, we're all in lockdown in one way or the other. So all the best. And I want to again thank Apeejay Kolkata Literary Festival, and as well as Westland, who are the publishers of Kabir's remarkable, candid, and just such an intimate insight. We're so used to this PR-obsessed world of celebrity narratives that he's done it once again. You know, he's come out and shown tremendous courage, and once again reminded us of in this highly censured world of how to be truly free and be yourself and be authentic. So I think for me, that was the biggest learning from your book, for me personally.
Thank you, Advaita.
So thank you, everybody,
appreciate everything you said. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for watching.